Thank you. Good morning. My name is Lonnie Hirsch, otherwise known for this conference as the Icebreaker. I'm happy to get things started with everybody. As Scott mentioned, I have been in a variety of roles in healthcare marketing for the past, I don't want to say how many years, but it's approaching 30 years. And so in that process, I've owned my own healthcare marketing agency, I've run other agencies, and now I'm at a point where I get to have the choice to do strategic consulting instead of managing a business, which I've done a lot, because that's what I really like to do. And you find if you've had a career like mine, sometimes as your career advances, you get further away from what got you into the field in the first place, or what really inspires you. So now I do strategic consulting, and I actually work actively with clients instead of managing a business separately from that. So one of the reasons that I was asked to start with this particular topic of latest hospital marketing trends is because in addition to my consulting, I interview opinion leaders, thought leaders, hospital executives, other healthcare executives on a regular basis, and I publish articles. And so when I was asked to develop this topic, as I often do, I interviewed about a dozen different hospital marketing executives and industry thought leaders to get their perspective. So I wouldn't just be giving you mine as just an opinion. So this presentation really addresses the feedback that I've received during that interview process. How do I advance? Oh, I see. Okay. So the first topic that kept coming up regularly in my interviews, and I know those of you here, it's pretty much everybody who works in or with hospitals already knows this, but the accelerating trend to outpatient care is an issue that's impacting the approach to marketing that hospitals and health systems are taking. One of the reasons that I am fortunate enough to be invited in to consult is because I see it and have experience from both sides, because I also work with independent medical groups, many of whom have now been absorbed into health systems and are now employed physicians, or the clinics are owned by the health systems. And hospitals have realized over the past several years during this acquisition phase that marketing an outpatient clinic has different rules and different approaches than might be applied traditionally in marketing hospitals. And so, if your hospital or health system operates outpatient medical clinics, you have to take a look at what the issues are that drive the business there. And one of the issues that you're going to see is, or that you are seeing, increased use of outpatient surgery centers. That's a process that either ends up being joint ventures between the health system and independent physicians, or is owned by the hospital or health system itself. But also, the issue of urgent care has become more and more prominent. Just a quick show of hands, how many of you who work in a hospital or health system have urgent care clinics as part of that? Okay, very few. I'm surprised. Because that trend is accelerating. And the reason it's accelerating is because for most Americans under the age of 40, urgent care has become their default primary care. They don't go to a doctor regularly. They go when they're sick or injured, and they want to get in somewhere quickly. And if the injury is not serious enough to require emergency room care, then urgent care is their default. So as a front door for outpatient clinic primary care and the residual specialty services, urgent care is becoming very prominent. Now, for those of you who know about this part of the industry, urgent care has become very corporate in terms of ownership and investors. There are a lot of big investment groups that now own urgent care clinics and are competing with hospitals, with other primary care practices, and drawing in a lot of patients. And then they add specialty services, and they can feed from the urgent care into the specialty services and capture market share, you know, pretty aggressively depending on their position in the market. So if you are not in the urgent care space in a health system or hospital, it's something that your senior leadership may be looking at, or maybe should be looking at, because that's going to be where a lot of the initial patient interaction and control will be. High deductible plans mean more patients shopping price. So I'm a perfect example. I have a high deductible plan, and the first $5,000 is out of my pocket, going to satisfy my deductible. So what happens when people, more and more people, and the employers are shifting more of the financial burden of healthcare to the employees, so more of them are offering more or even exclusively high deductible plans. When you're in that kind of situation, you think very carefully about when and how you use healthcare, because it's not just, oh, you know, it's covered by my insurance, or I have a small copay. No, instead, it's like, do I really need to do this, or do I really need to do this now, or maybe when I satisfy my deductible in 6 or 7 months, maybe then I'll get that done. So that is driving a lot of behavior from the patient's perspective as well, which means one of the things that people like me who have high deductible plans start to recognize is, how much is this going to cost? Because I know it's coming out of my pocket. So they do tend to ask those shopper price questions that historically insurance-based healthcare has not had to deal with very much. So that's also important in terms of a trend for hospitals and health systems in terms of what is it going to cost. So for example, as you know, many hospitals, if somebody comes in as a patient to an outpatient clinic, they get 2 bills, one for professional services and one for facility. And in the past, nobody would have really thought twice about that, but now they're comparing pricing more, and they go, well, wait a minute, how come I'm going to have to pay this much more to you than the other place that I just called? So that's something that you have to be aware of as well. And if you, as the outpatient clinic of the hospital, are going to compete with other outside entities, and you're going to be priced higher than they are, then you have to communicate a lot more value as a distinction for why I should pay more to come to you. So that's an important marketing issue more and more. Outpatient marketing is more user-friendly and more personal, or needs to be, compared to traditional institutional hospital marketing. And it's a good thing for hospitals and health systems now to be able to market that way, because no matter how touchy-feely hospitals have tried to be historically with their marketing of their institution, hospitals as a product is not something that people usually associate with warm and fuzzy. And so even if you try to project that, there's a certain level of disconnect or skepticism on the part of many people as to whether that's really the case, because after all, it is a hospital. And I'm going to show you a little video in a minute that speaks to that point. I also got a lot of feedback from the people that I interviewed that they recognize that patients are taking more control of their healthcare choices. That doesn't mean that they don't necessarily rely on existing relationships with existing physicians in terms of referrals for specialty care, for example, but generally a more educated healthcare consumer, which we have had to become as more of the financial burden falls on us, is going to want to ask questions and get the kinds of answers that we're looking for. in terms of our decisions about where and what kind of care we accept.
So the doctors don't let you
Can
sleep.
you put up the volume a little bit on
If
this?
you think you're going to get sleep, then you're crazy. Because they come in at 6 in the morning, and they don't all come together. There's a med student first, most of the time, and then there's another one, and then there's another one, and then there are residents, and then there's the actual doctor, who's the actual important one, and then my other doctor, my rheumatologist, he comes in at noon, like a normal person on his lunch break, and he actually cares about me, so he lets me sleep. But then the other ones are just like, oh, no, I don't care. Like, do you need sleep to heal? No, I don't think so. Like, that's crazy. Like, who needs sleep? That's not important. So they come in at whatever time, at 6 in the morning, and I am here, and I need sleep. I need to be awake. I need to be happy. And I've tried to tell them that I give better answers, and I will talk to you more. I will participate more if I'm not laying in bed like, what did you say to me? Are you talking to me? I'm asleep. I'm sorry. Yeah, so that's not going to work if you're not getting me engaged and talking to you. Then that's how people work together and do things, because they talk. And if they don't talk, then it's bad. It's just not good. It's not good. And it really annoys me too when they ignore you and they try to talk to your parents. Like, I am 15 years old. I know that it's not that old, but at least I should have some say in what I want being done to me. Like, I am the patient and I need to be heard. Like, I am the patient. It's going to end up happening to me anyway. So if you try to leave the room to protect me from whatever, it doesn't work. I would like to hear what you're about to do to me. If you're about to poke me with a freaking needle, tell me. If you're about to cut off my arm, tell me. I need to know.
That video has about 500,000 views, and this is one 15-year-old sharing her experience, that patient experience in terms of her medical care. Actually, she was invited to speak. I don't know how many of you have attended the Patient Experience Summit that Cleveland Clinic puts on every year, but she and her mother were speakers at that meeting a couple of years ago. And very bright, obviously articulate young lady, but she's 15, or was at the time. So if you look at the perspective from the point of view of adults as well as people who are not yet quite adults, this is a big issue. Patients want to be more in control of their healthcare decisions, and they want to participate more in those healthcare decisions. So when you look at your model for the patient engagement process to set yourself up to have strong, loyal relationships with patients, how many of you in your institutions have actually gone through a process of mapping the patient journey? What the actual, there you go, we've got some hands up. The actual experience from the patient's perspective, what they see, what they hear, how they're treated, where they wait, how long they wait, what is or is not communicated to them, what happens after a visit or an inpatient stay, what is ongoing communication, and what does that look like? So when you, and I've worked recently with a couple of different hospitals to help them with that mapping process, mapping the journey. And what's interesting is one of those hospitals really took that information and really made substantive changes in the process of how they engage with patients, both inpatients and outpatients. And the other is still in committee discussing it a year later. So it's not just about understanding from the perspective of the patient, it's also about what you do with that information when you have it. So that means thinking like the patient. Hospitals, frankly, historically, have not had to have that point of view, as reflected by that young lady's comments. It's like, well, you know, you're a part of our process and here's how it's going to be. You can't do that anymore. and expect to be successful. Even more so, in some respects, in an outpatient setting, you can't, because the competition is more sophisticated. And you are in a service industry, and a service industry means that your customer decides how they feel about you and how they use you. Your end user customer and their family members. And of course, you know how reputation management online has progressed. So you don't have to motivate people who are unhappy to post something negative about you online. They're very self-motivated. However, if you have many positive experiences with patients, those patients won't necessarily think on their own, well, let me go and post a positive review online. So you have to have a user-friendly process for helping patients who are happy with you post something quickly online. And invite them to do it, remind them to do it. Many of you probably already have some kind of process like this in place. You don't want, there's some legal issues in terms of how you structure that so that it doesn't appear that you are attempting to manipulate a positive review. But it should be done. It should be done because so many people are making healthcare decisions now based on reviews. So it's not a minor issue anymore. It's a major influencer of decisions in healthcare as well as other industries. So you have to start to think of the patient as a customer and not an electronic health record. And you have to think about what kind of expectations are we setting for our relationship with the patient. And setting expectations is also about understanding what the patient's expectations might be coming into the process, and then helping them have a context for what is in fact going to happen and why that's a good thing for them. Patient engagement, because of the wanting to take more control, a lot of the marketing is becoming more and more symptom driven. Help me identify that that problem that I have is something that you can help me with. Now, the pharmaceutical industry has been doing this very successfully for a long time, but in the provider side of healthcare, marketing symptoms has been less common than marketing services. But people will recognize why they should pay attention to your message if you're talking about something that's going on in their life right now, and then in that context, telling me how you can help. You got to get to the point quickly. People are very, very short attention span now, whether it's online marketing or other type of marketing. You have to grab somebody's attention quickly. We are overwhelmed with many thousands of messages every day of our lives in all the different ways in which we acquire information. So breaking through the clutter requires a really clear and relevant message that gets my attention quickly and gets to the point quickly. Doesn't mean everything has to be short, but in terms of patient engagement, get to the point quickly, or I'm not going to even be paying more attention to you. That applies to how your websites are structured as well. When I come to a website for a hospital, finding what I'm actually looking for is often challenging. It's certainly not intuitively user-friendly in many cases. And the call to action is important as well. And you who are all marketers, I understand you know the importance of call to action. But not necessarily all the hospital institutions understand that it's not enough to tell people what you do and why you're good. You have to encourage them to take the next step and make it clear to them how they should do that. Obviously, most of my conversations with these executives and thought leaders focused a lot on the online space because so much of the information flow is being absorbed through online and through devices. And searches are now, what, something like 65% from mobile devices. So even the desktop and laptop has taken a back seat to smartphones and tablets. And as you know, those of you who work on the digital side in your businesses, when I do a search on my smartphone, what comes up and what comes up in what order is different than when I'm searching on a laptop. So you have to be able to, again, think like the patient. What information are they looking for? How do I get to the point quickly with what they're looking for on a smaller screen? I have an iPhone 6 Plus, so I have about the biggest screen you can have on a smartphone, and it's still a small screen. So when you look at getting to the point, what do I see on the page that you take me to before I have to scroll down? That is prime real estate. And it's not generally thought through that way if you look at a lot of hospital and outpatient clinic websites through the prism of the smartphone. If you don't get my attention quickly, I'm going somewhere else to look. Geo-targeting is more and more prevalent as well. How many of you either do or are at least familiar with the terms geofencing and geoconquesting? Okay. So for those of you who didn't raise your hands really quickly, geofencing is where you can establish a geographic parameter that you want around your facility that will feed ads to smartphones of people in that catchment area. Geoconquesting is doing the same thing around your competitors' environment. So these processes of getting into that thing I hold in my hand all the time, and on every break, and sometimes even while I'm talking, people are looking on that particular device. So that's where the information flow is going and must go for hospital-owned entities as much as any other type of healthcare business. Online reputation management, I touched on briefly. I want to make sure I'm staying on time. Online reputation management, you can't close off negative reviews. And when people are going through a healthcare experience, a lot of times they're not in the best mood anyway. And so if things don't go well, they want to complain. So you can't cut off the flow of negative reviews. You have to inspire enough positive reviews to offset the negative reviews. Now, there's two parts to this actually. One is having a vehicle and a process to be able to notice and respond to negative feedback. Sometimes you can resolve an issue with somebody who's posted something negative, and they will actually be satisfied and remove the negative post. You can't remove it, but they can. Additionally, another process is, and I work with a company that does this process entirely electronically, where you check in on a tablet when you come in to the clinic or the office. Your check-in is fill in, name and email and so forth on the tablet. That's the check-in process. That check-in process then triggers a survey that is sent to their mobile device, to their smartphone, within 24 hours after their appointment. That says, we'd really love your feedback. We want to always make the patient experience better. Please click here and just give us some quick feedback. And if you don't respond to that one, you get another text 2 days later. If you don't respond to that one, you get another text before they stop texting you. So you get 3 texts or up to 3 texts encouraging you to click that link and take that survey. And when you go through that link, it basically gives you 2 choices. Would you recommend us? Yes or no? If the answer is no, that opens up a survey feedback form that they can fill out as to why they wouldn't recommend you. And that survey feedback form is routed to wherever you designate that it's routed, so that you may be able to preempt a negative online review because you've asked for that feedback quickly after the appointment, and you have some resolution process to respond to negative feedback to try to accommodate or fix the negative impression and hopefully remove the risk of a negative review. If they say, yes, I would recommend you, it opens up a page with links to their different review site pages. You know, review us on Yelp, review us on Google, review us on whatever they put in there. And you click that link and it takes you right to their page, post a review, really easy. Now again, not everybody who gets that will go ahead and post the review, but that's one easy operational way to at least invite people who said they would recommend you to share their experience briefly, and without them having to figure out in a complicated way how to go find the place to post the review. And it's all coming through the smartphone. So the process of online reputation management needs to be systematized. There is a human element to it in terms of response to negative feedback, but as much as you can automate it, you're not going to let issues slip through the cracks, whether it's positive feedback or negative. A lot of emailing to patients with their permission is increasing, notwithstanding HIPAA issues, because you're inviting them to opt in or opt out. And that's another vehicle, although text messaging is even more likely to continue to be a dominant communication path. But just because you have email addresses doesn't necessarily mean you have opt-in for those email addresses. And even if you do have opt-in for those email addresses, what are you doing strategically with that vehicle of communication? And a lot of you who are more sophisticated in terms of data mining and tailoring messages to specific patients who have already been your patient about their particular issues or conditions that have been identified, or risk of family members being susceptible to the same kind of conditions, that's starting to become much more specific in the email targeting. And my last point on this slide, videos. All kinds of videos. I'm surprised, actually, at how few hospital websites really have any significant number of videos. Videos are an engagement device for a visitor, for many visitors. They are a social media device because they're also posted on YouTube and other social media sites. They are an SEO function because your ranking can be affected by videos that you post online. And videos are visceral. So whether you're talking about patient testimonial videos, which are very powerful, or you're talking about videos on a particular process or a procedure or interviews with physicians or whatever number of topics that you want to prioritize, it doesn't mean you have to become a YouTube on your website, but it does mean you need to think about how you engage people when they come to your site, and how quickly you can engage them, and how long you can get them to stay. So in terms of emotion, videos are visceral, text is more intellectual, no matter how you write it. Access is an increasingly big issue. I'm sure many of you are already aware of that, but I got that feedback from a lot of the people that I interviewed. So things like online appointment scheduling for outpatient clinics particularly, or for urgent care centers. That's becoming more and more important. Again, I work with one medical group up in the state of Washington, large multi-specialty medical group, and they also have urgent care. And on that part of their website, you have two issues that you can find out as soon as you go to that space. Number one is you can see at each of their locations how many people are already in there waiting to be seen. So you know how long you're likely to have to wait. The second issue is you can make an appointment to come in for urgent care. If I don't want to wait around, it's urgent, but I don't have to come over literally this minute. I'd like to come over in 2 hours. I can make an appointment for 2 hours from now. So again, patient feeling like they have more control over their health care decisions and that process. Extended hours. It depends on what the services are, but particularly in outpatient settings, a lot of people can't get there during the business workday. So it's maybe operationally challenging sometimes to offer extended hours, but it's a much in-demand feature increasingly in healthcare. That means after hours on weekdays. That means Saturday hours. For urgent care, it means 7 days a week usually. That means more appointment slots available during the lunchtime period between noon and 2. All of those issues are things that help consumers decide where to go and who to get help from. After-hours helplines, actually manned by actual human beings and not recordings, to help people with their questions, and in some cases to schedule them for the following day or a few days later. So just generally, the more access so that I can have my patient available to come in when they feel the need to come in, rather than having to wait, is a differentiator. It's increasingly becoming a big differentiator in the hospital-owned clinic space. Marketing your brand to your customers, one of the customer groups that's often neglected are your actual employees and staff of your organization. Just like the end user patient or a referring physician or an insurance company, your staff, your employees are customers, because if they're not buying what you're selling, they're not going to reflect that. And so why would you expect the end user to buy in when your own employees don't seem to? So you have to include them. You have to engage them. You have to keep them informed. Marketing is not a department. It is a process. So yes, you have a marketing department, but every employee of your organization is a marketing representative for your business, whether they want that title and responsibility or not, because they are either reinforcing a positive impression or contradicting your attempt to create positive impressions. So they have to understand, they have to be brought into the process early. If you're launching a new marketing or advertising campaign, they should be the first ones to be exposed to that, not the last to know. They should be seeing or hearing whatever the campaign is going to include before the campaign launches, and understand their role in supporting that process. Okay, so the basically last topic I want to cover here in this brief time is the patient experience. It goes back to what we were talking about a little bit with that video, but just in general, when you think about the fact that people are not only making decisions about whether to come to you, but they're also making decisions about what type of information they're going to share online or with other people about their experience. This is one of the hardest issues for health systems around the country to address, because everybody intellectually understands that it's important. But actually changing behavior, actually having people in an organization see the patient as a customer and not just a patient, actually looking at the process of how do we project that we are customer friendly, and how do we behave so that we are customer friendly. That's where the heavy lifting is. So how many of you have in your organization somebody with a title, something like Chief Experience Officer? Okay, it's only 2 hands up. That is an increasingly critical success factor for hospitals and health systems. Somebody needs to own that initiative and have enough authority and enough buy-in to be able to evolve and make change that's going to make for a more receptive and positive patient experience. And you don't have to eat the whole elephant in one bite. You don't have to transform the entire organization overnight. Start somewhere. Do your own little beta test on a particular clinic or a particular office or a particular department and see if you can make positive change there with somebody owning that, and then evolve and extend that eventually across the entire organization. Much easier said than done. Easy for Lonnie to stand up here and say, go do this, than to make it happen. But if you're wanting to talk about the differentiators for success in the future in the hospital-owned healthcare space, this is going to be increasingly the big separator. Not who's saying they're patient-friendly, because everybody's going to say it, but who's actually delivering it. Because that's where you'll see the feedback. And the last point, measurable metrics. When you're looking at the marketing, this is another issue that I got from all my interviews, is either they were big into or working on solving how to measure success quantifiably. And again, historically, hospitals do primarily brand marketing, whether it's the hospital overall or service lines. So measuring results and success in brand marketing is a lot harder. And that means you have to look at what metrics can we use to give evidence that what we're doing is worthwhile, that there's a payoff here. Whether you're tracking landing page conversions or you're using call tracking numbers for specific ads to track activity through the phone, whether you're measuring, which you already do, I'm sure, the number of referrals you're getting from each physician or each physician office and how that's changing, conversions from seminars and events. What do you mean conversions? We're putting on a seminar. Yeah, for what purpose? So if we're not getting people to want to act on the information they got at that seminar or that community event and do something to engage them with our organization, it's PR, but it's not quantifiable results. And if you want to keep getting more support and more budget to get your message out there, you need to be able to show your senior management, your executive leadership, where the quantifiable results are. So that's it. That's my story. That's the input from a lot of, well, about a dozen healthcare executives in hospitals around the country. I appreciate your time, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them either now or I guess maybe not now because I ran over time. Okay. If anybody has any questions right now, or you can catch me later, I'll be around during the conference.
Who wants to be the first question of the minute?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
So maybe this is just a system issue that I work for, but how are you or others collecting email addresses to send out patient newsletters? We have continually run into these kinds of struggles with how to gather a consistent, large, critical mass of email addresses. They won't let us use the ones we get upon registration, and it might just be our compliance folks. But any suggestions, aside from maybe some of the obvious ones, some new things I'd love to hear?
Well, first of all, I'll give you a little input on that, but I would also invite anybody who's gotten over that hurdle to share that feedback with you as well. What I've seen is the process that's easiest for that is in the registration process. It's not just about collecting an email address, it's about designating that, yes, I would like to receive important information from you. So you've got the opt-in at registration, because you're not just collecting an email address, you're inviting them to receive information. And if they opt out, they opt out. But the ones that opt in, you've got it. Yes, ma'am.
The other thing that we've seen that works too is just when you're developing a large mass of valuable content that's available for people on your website. So they're going to come to learn about you, but maybe they're just going to come to learn about a symptom or a condition. And if you create some gated, valuable content, whether it's like a guide or something that someone has to opt into, again, it'll come down to that language, but if you're giving them something of value, then we see people are a little more likely to forfeit their emails over. I think you're totally correct. The registration process is your lowest hanging fruit, but we've seen that some good content out there, people are willing to give that up.
But you know, you don't position it as marketing. Do I want to receive important health information from my institution? And I say yes or no.
This is Michael Andrews from WebMD. You can also, using a third party, blind out your registrants, merge it with a publisher partners list, and then they can email the people that have the overlap. So they're already, like, say, with WebMD, they're already registered with us, so we can send them something. And if it's a large enough list, most likely we'll have a large amount of overlap. And then they're used to getting WebMD emails. It's the softer, not so direct marketing sort of. Yeah, absolutely. So there are ways you can go about it that use third parties between the vendor and yourself to make it anonymous, merge, purge, to send that stuff out.
The last point that I would want to make on this topic is you can collect all the opt-in email addresses you want. And if your information that you're sending them isn't relevant to them, they will either opt out or simply ignore the emails they get from you in the future. There has to be a reason for me to pay attention, spend a minute or 2 minutes actually looking at this. I don't know about your behavior, but general public behavior on opt-in emails is most people don't opt out once they opt in. They simply delete, 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 delete. So you can send them something every day or every week, and if it's not useful, you're not training them to want to open your emails, and that's where the action happens. I don't want to take more time. I'm taking time away from another speaker, but thank you for being here. I'm around if you have any questions, and I'll turn it over to Scott again.
Thanks, Lonnie.